is Europe declining?
Ukraine would really need, in the next year about $150 billion.
Their dealings, especially with the next U.S. administration.
There could be some negativism.
Good day, everyone. My name is Muhammad Ihsan, and I'm here today with Professor Naser Tahboub from the School of the National Studies of the University of Jordan. How are you, Professor?
Hello, sir.
Yes, so Professor, tonight we're going to discuss about the divided Europe, or is Europe declining, basically. So maybe before we jump into that topic, maybe you can elaborate on some points of why or what aspects that actually divide Europe.
I think this is a timely topic right now because, we're in a period of transition, a new administration in the United States. And this administration, in the first term, had to contend with its European allies. And as you know, that Europe is, part of, Western Europe is part of the NATO alliance. And today, we're talking about a juncture where the European economy, the European Union, is facing a series of challenges. And among them is the issue of security when it comes to Ukraine and the war in Ukraine. This is the number one issue. Second is that the economies of the countries in Western Europe are facing serious economic challenges. And the third has to do with the immigration of people from Africa and North Africa and throughout the world to Europe. And they have to contend with those three issues and give it priority because they are important, critical issues that will affect Western Europe as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when we're talking about Europe or the EU, I mean, EU has certain ideals and their models are actually used by Global South, such as the Association of Southeast Asian Region, ASEAN, as well as Mercosur. So it is very, unfortunate, quote unquote, because they are actually viewed as, the ideal with their ideas of democratization, with their values of liberty, of freedom, of basically a European identity. However, right now they're facing a decline, And what do you think is the key issues that they are facing right now?
Yes, indeed, we should recognize that Europe has played a very important role in promoting liberal democracies around the world. And I share with you that this is an important issue, particularly in developing countries. And I think we should take notice of the fact that after the Second World War, researchers and scholars were optimistic that, this change in Europe with the Human Rights Charter and, commitment towards liberalism and so forth, will ultimately lead to a democratic transformation around the world. But then again, today when we talk about Europe, you should distinguish two important issues. Europe at the national level, and then Europe at the regional level, the European Union. Because the issues that, the Union has to face, such as Ukraine, and, funding the war, bringing up the resources, coming up with the resources, is really a challenge to all the countries in the region. It is expected that Ukraine would really need, in the next year about $150 billion. But then again, if you look at the countries of the region, you will find that on the national level, priorities are not really the same as the European level. And when it comes to the issue of the national level, there are elections that are being held in Europe, in Germany on the 23rd of February, I guess. We're going to have elections, the recent elections in Italy and in France and so forth. So the domestic issues are of concern. The well-being of the economy, jobs, market, healthcare are always important issues that will affect the voting behavior in these Western democracies.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Yeah, so you're suggesting that Europe right now, their policies are European, but their politics are basically national.
Absolutely. Correctly. That's, an accurate description of what is happening in Europe now.
Yes. And therefore, the key issues that they focus should be in economy, in security, and as well their dealings, especially with the next U.S. administration.
Well, it's not an easy task because even when it comes to security, the number one issue now today in Europe is the issue of Ukraine and how to handle this war.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are those who are willing, such as the Germans, Italians, and the French, to finance the war. But then again, there are priorities in countries like, for example, Poland, where they are having a very hard time coming up with the cash to support the war, despite the fact that they are for the war, they are part of the willing group. But then, each country has its own particular, set of problems. And domestically, you will find that political parties are participating, and there is a tendency in Europe now is to move towards the right, particularly, influenced by immigration and its impact upon Europe as a whole. So, when we talk about the issue of security, yes, it is an important subject. It is necessary to finance the war, but then again, where are they going to come up with the money? Like to take, for example, the case of Germany. I mean, the German government has already overspent, and they have borrowed billions of euros. And, even today, the German constitution limits how much Germany can borrow. So if they need to borrow more money to fulfill their commitment towards the war, they would have to go to the legislatures in order to seek approval to amend the constitution. And it's not an easy task. And, when you relate this to the other challenge, the relationship with the new administration in Washington, we have President Trump, who in the first term of his administration, when he was elected the first time, he saw that Europe should, spend more money, and he was pressuring NATO allies to spend more. He accused the Europeans, of getting a free ride. In other words, the United States will actually pay for security and to finance NATO and so forth, and they are not paying their fair share. Today, the Trump administration is asking the European Union, and in particular the NATO countries, to increase their spending from 2% to 3% of their annual budget. But even to come up with this money, it's not an easy task.
Yeah.
I hope I explained.
Understood. So are you suggesting, Professor, that a more stable relations between the U.S. and Europe can be established, especially with the U.S. administration, if European countries are more committed or are willing to spend more on their security, especially on NATO?
Yes, indeed. But then again, what we need to take into consideration, is an important issue, which is post-Western world. The European countries have all nowadays are having serious economic problems. You will find that, those countries are in need to invest in high technology, in infrastructure, in social welfare programs. And these are pressures that are being, exerted by political parties in those countries. So the money and where is it going to come from is really important. And, when I said the period in basically what I said is post-Western countries, post-Western period, we're talking about now other competitors in China, in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, Indonesia, in India, and so forth. They are part of the world economy. Not only that, but the Americans are competing with Europeans. It used to be that Europe had the largest economy in the world. Now they are second to the Americans. The Americans have grown, and the American economy has grown, and there's more growth today in America than in Europe. So, we have witnessed a dramatic slowdown in growth in Europe. Not only that, but there are fiscal problems that are there. And I can tell you, in all honesty, a great deal of the trouble comes from the war in Ukraine and has to be addressed. But then again, The future would require that they negotiate with the Americans, see what President Trump is asking for, to what extent they are going to be forthcoming and providing funds, and where are they going to get it from. It's really important.
Yes. I will go off topic for a while, Professor, which is Tucker Carlson.
Yes, sir.
He interviewed Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov recently.
Yes.
And what do you think of Sergei Lavrov's opinion when it comes to the Ukraine and Russia conflict?
Yeah, I saw that interview really, and the interview is really important, but it is disturbing because Mr. Lavrov, he accused the American troops of being involved in combat in Ukraine, and he is suggesting that the Americans are already involved in the war, direct involvement in fighting against Ukraine and ultimately Russia. Now, I think what he is referring to is the fact that there are American advisors on the ground. And for the Russians, they see the presence of American advisors as unacceptable. And for them, the Americans are taking sides, and it is as if there is a direct involvement in the war, which is unacceptable. I think you have to take that with a grain of salt. The American advisors are there, but I want to remind you of something that is very important.
Which is?
That in November 1973, something called the War Powers Act. And that's really an important one because, the law says that, any U.S. president who previously had the right to declare war against any country or introduction of American troops anywhere in the world, could do that. But the War Powers Act restricted the president's powers by requiring that the U.S. president will have to get the approval of the U.S. Congress for the introduction of American troops and their involvement in any war within 60 days of the start of combat or conflict. Now, if the United States is attacked at any time, the U.S. president has the right to declare war against a foreign enemy, but he has to get the approval of the U.S. Congress in 60 days. Now, to talk about American boots on the ground is not a easy matter. First of all, the U.S. Congress, the American public, their presence will escalate, the crisis into a different level. And, we realize we are talking about two superpowers, and it is not easy to move from one level to another because, I saw the interview, and some would insinuate that, both parties are ready to use, limited tactical nuclear weapons, which I seriously doubt will happen. I don't think it's going to happen. It is unexpected. I doubt that this will reach that level. But the introduction of, long-range artillery and advisors is very dangerous. We need to make sure that, we look at this carefully and we return to the negotiating table in order to find some kind of a solution, some kind of compromise. Because, the foreign minister, he was referring to the fact that there needs to be negotiations with the Ukrainians to discuss issues that matter to the Ukrainians, to the Russians living in Ukraine. And, negotiation is the answer. Go ahead, sir.
Yes. When it comes to the divided Europe, as well as the Ukraine-Russia conflict, we also have to discuss about do Trump have a peace proposal when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia conflict? And how will Europe accept this peace proposal that Trump will put forward?
In all honesty, if I tell you that we know, or any person, or any political scientist, or any researcher can tell you for sure what the president is going to do, would be misleading. But we can generally speculate that, the president said that he was going to bring about a ceasefire within 1 hour. and that he would like to put an end to the war. And he was hoping to see an end of the war before his inauguration on January 15th. Now, rationally speaking, for us as researchers, analysts, and so forth, we say that if this conflict is going to end, the Ukrainians have got their own demands. They would like to see Russia withdraw out of Ukraine, and the Russians have got their own requirements. They have got a sizable population that lives in Ukraine, and they have got their own demands. What do they expect? What was the reason that they went into Ukraine in the first place? I mean, this Russian population that exists, are they going to seek independence? They're going to become a part of a confederation? Will the Russians withdraw? Can there be a deal that is guaranteed whereby, the safety of the Russian population, that Ukraine would be a neighboring state that is not an ally to any foreign force, and it would not be used as a location to place weapons of mass destruction and so forth. So they have to sit down and talk about it. I doubt that it's going to be in 1 hour, but, let's see what happens, on the 15th.
Yeah. And now let's get back to Europe, Doctor. And let's say their main players, which are France, Germany, and Italy.
Yes.
So will there be a coalition of a willing in order to basically unite the European Union back? One voice, because I think it's best for Europe to be in one stand when it comes to their dealing with the Trump administration, especially when it comes to the military budget, because it'll be negative, basically. For example, if one country in Europe are committed to the security interests, while the other are not committed to the security interests because of national interests. What do you think of that?
You should not underestimate the importance and the significance of the presence of the NATO alliance. And, the European Union and European countries have made major strides. Yes, there are some problems that exist in Europe, but I can assure you, this is not the end of the European Union, and this is not the end of NATO. There could be some negativism relating to NATO from the Americans and criticism, asking them to spend more money for security and so forth. But this institution that has come about is an important one, significant one, and a very wealthy one. There are some major decisions that need to be taken by the European countries, such as investment in high technology, in defense, and so forth. I honestly think that they would be able to reach some kind of a conclusion regarding investment and the continuous and the maintenance of the NATO alliance, because that alliance has played a very important and significant role in containment of expansionism in Eastern Europe and rolling back the Iron Curtain during the Cold War. So, we have not seen the end of it, and I don't expect to see the end of it in the near future.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Professor, thank you so much for your time. It's a good conversation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome anytime.